SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Are you in your element? This is Jeremy Nelson, your host for Element Wealth Radio, every Sunday from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. and Wednesday from 9 to 10 a.m. right here on SuperTalk Jackson 97.3. Element Wealth Radio, helping you complete your financial picture.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Man, yeah, we have made it, and what's incredible is that we got the high school football going on tonight, the scoreboard show kicking off here on SuperTalk Mississippi. And then pretty soon we'll be playing college football. And what's really crazy, Rhino, is watching these preseason NFL games when it's like 140 outside. That's unbelievable. You've seen the NFL. They're thinking about expanding the schedule to play some games over in Europe. Whew, I heard Dave Portnoy this morning on the business news on the way in. He was scolding the NFL over that. What do you think?
The talks were not just expanding the schedule to include overseas games. They said the long-term plan is to have overseas teams.
Yeah, I don't know about that. What are we going to call it?
And eventually have a Super Bowl held overseas.
Okay. I guess it would no longer be styled as labeled as the National Football League, right? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, they do call the Super Bowl the World Championship.
That is true. Because there's really no other organized professional football at that level, I guess.
At that level.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, man. Well, are you going to get on an airplane and follow your favorite team to Paris to watch them play?
I would imagine they're not going to pull the trigger on anything substantial until at least after 2030 for the next World Cup.
Okay.
Because the next World Cup is taking place in 6 different countries on 3 different continents. And they're going to be watching how the logistics work for that with teams and fans and workers and all that kind of nonsense. They're going to be watching that very closely before they make any major decisions on, hey, yeah, we should really try to get people flying across oceans to watch a game.
Exactly. Okay. Well, we'll see where that goes. I don't know why the management there, the commissioner and so forth, who are pushing for this. Now, I haven't seen anything with respect to the owners and how they feel about this move. The NFL team owners, of course. I'm not sure.
I mean, there's been a bit of pushback in the last few seasons when they've had international games on the schedule. They weren't exhibitions, but they were not a major part of the schedule. I think you've had less than a dozen total international games. But there have been conversations from the owners about the cost to pull it off and the worries about, like, when they had one scheduled for Mexico City, and I think they had to cancel it because security concerns and health concerns and all this kind of nonsense. I don't know that it's any real difference between the NFL wanting to go global than FIFA really wanting to get into the American market. They just see it as an untapped market. FIFA sees America as this giant economic potential for soccer. You would think NFL leadership would see the same dollar signs of, well, the rest of the world is ripe for the picking.
Yeah, I guess so. And I honestly think they wouldn't have any problem selling tickets, right? Getting attendance. I think folks in other parts of the country are fans of American football. Not talking about soccer football, American-style football, and I think they'd go to the game.
I mean, you look at the attendance of the games they've already had, they've been well-attended.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's where it gets into, are they well-attended because of the novelty?
Yeah.
Or are they well-attended because they're building fan bases? If they're actually going to expand and have more international participation, then you would think they're looking at it from the standpoint of we're building fan bases.
Yeah. Well, and you got to also consider all of the adjunct complimentary sales as well. I mean, not just tickets to sit in the stadium, watch the game, and enjoy the concessions, but all the merchandise and all the other stuff. And then the television.
Yeah, if you think all the crazy merch booths outside of sporting events in America are crazy, you see outside some of these Champions League events or some of the World Cup events that have been held in the past before FIFA took over all the merchandising.
Yeah.
It was like entire markets set up outside.
It's incredible.
And it's happened in Europe when they do the European NFL games. You just have the people that normally sell the soccer scarves outside the stadium are selling scarves with the NFL teams on them.
Well, we certainly shall see. I caught that on the way. I was still a little shocked at Dave Portnoy's reaction. He was pretty scolding. He was pretty critical of NFL management and really repudiated the whole deal. He didn't think it was a good idea. So he said, here's what he said. It's good for owners and good for the league, not good for fans. That's the way he put it. So if you think about a regular schedule, you're going to lose a game at home, right? You won't be able to see your favorite team. They won't be playing at home. They're playing in London today.
Well, I mean, technically, with two teams participating, wouldn't one be losing a home and one be losing an away?
Well, sure, but somebody's going to lose a home game out of it. I think it's impossible to make that schedule work out any other way, unless they added games, which it's already getting kind of ridiculous, isn't it, in that. And, of course, you can't underestimate the physical stress on the body playing week after week like that. That likely, if they added more games, I'm thinking that likely would mean shorter careers, potentially. So, well, just digressing a bit on something a little lighter than all this politics going on across the country. A shout out to an event I attended last evening, the Slavonian Lodge down in Biloxi. You know, there is a fairly large, extensive Slavic community on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, in particular in the Biloxi area. I got to tell you, Rhino, they started us out, probably 250 people there, 300. I'm honored to have been invited to attend. They meet every Thursday. Really nice building. It got wiped out, the old one in Katrina, and they rebuilt. Really fantastic structure there. By the way, I checked it out on the map. It's 0.7 of a mile from where my wife grew up in Biloxi on Holly Street, on the point there, for those on the coast that are familiar with that. Her house, built in the 20s, flattened by Katrina, nothing but a slab there. Actually, no slab. I should restate that. A few of the bricks, because it was built during the period when you put the houses up on brick post supports, if you will. Few of those bricks are there, but there's nothing else. I think there's a couple of steps. You had steps that led up to the front porch, totally flattened. But they showed a video to get us started that really just portrayed the history of Slavic settlement in the area, really built the Gulf Coast seafood industry. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And great folks. It, of course, was emceed by Biloxi Mayor Fofo Gilich. He, of course, Slavic. And just great people. They're very, very philanthropic, very charitable, done a lot for the community. And the ambassador from Croatia was there last night and offered some remarks. This country has a very strong working relationship with Croatia, but really enjoyed that. A lot of fun, appreciate it, and great food. Ran into some strong rain on the way back. You were watching those little pop-up storms around the area, a little bit moved through here, but looks like north of us, in particular, the Canton area here in central Mississippi and several around the coast. I ran into it between Wiggins and Hattiesburg. Pretty strong, like big old drops, coming down. So grateful for that because it's been kind of dry here across the state and particularly here in central Mississippi.
Yeah, I'm still not sure if it was weather-related or somebody hit a pole or something, but I woke up this morning at 5:17 a.m. to the sound of silence.
Really?
The fan slowing down. Because I didn't have power for like 2.5 hours this
I'll
morning.
be darned. Well,
yeah.
I saw some like warnings on these neighborhood social media sites saying, hey, look, expect that there may be some power outages. Pretty strong stuff moved through. When I looked at the map, it was a fairly large area of red, indicating you got some strong rain and usually some winds in there, and that'll knock the power out. We're all good to go today. We've got Don Redman, spokesman for AAA at 10:35, and then Kelly Bennett from the news department at 11:20. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk Mississippi.
Like me, say to you, love me do, and I'll be true. And what I'd like for you to say is you'll come home to me each day. How you'll be my girl, that's what I want. Just you, sweet girl, not a front. It's just like me, you feel so good, and I fall so much in love with you.
Welcome back, everyone. That's Paul Revere and the Raiders. I love that song. I love that group back in the day. I'm trying to think of the afternoon show that they would host. You can look it up for me there in the 60s on the beach, like in California. It was in black and white. I think they were the host. And it was just playing the current music of the day and lots of just random young folks in attendance there on the beach dancing it up. Not the hullabaloo, something like that. But that's, of course...
Where the action is.
Where the action is.
Dick
That's right.
Clark's Where the Action Is.
That's exactly right. Let me tell you where the action is. That's right. I remember that. You can probably find the theme song and play it. Of course, that's Mark Lindsay on lead vocals. But the founder, keyboards, Paul Revere, he died. Remember, in 2014... It's amazing just looking at the members of the group. Two of them are still with us. Mark Lindsay, the lead singer. Phil Fang Volk, the bassist. The lead guitarist, Drake Levin, passed away 2009. Mike Smitty Smith, the drummer, 2001. And Paul Revere, the most recent to pass away at age 76, 2014. A lot of people think Mark Lindsay, the lead singer, is the Paul Revere. It's actually the keyboardist. And he founded the group. Yeah, let me tell you where the action is. That's right. That's kind of how...
We gotta keep moving. We're gonna have a lot of fun.
I love it.
Travel all over. Always on the run. On the road or in a car. We're gonna travel near and far. We're gonna be there where the action is. Never gonna get
That's awesome. I think that's kind of how Dick Clark got his start. That was sort of pre-American Bandstand when he was, which she hosted for seems like forever. You know, America's oldest living teenager, they refer to him as. Every now and then I'll go watch some of the some of the clips of the old American Bandstand, of the songs, live performances. Kind of fun. Just digressing.
Apparently, Dick Clark's big break came when he stepped in as the host of Bob Horn's Bandstand.
Okay, so Bob Horn had a show before that called Bandstand.
Yeah, when Horn was arrested for drunk driving in '56, Clark took over as the full-time host.
56, jeez. But he was doing that in the 60s, right? Where the action is?
Yeah, that was 65.
65. I just remember.
It also notes that the changes helped Bandstand become a national hit when it moved to ABC in '57.
There you go. That's even before I was born, and I'm old and among us here. But I do remember as a youngster where the action is in the afternoons, black and white. I'm not sure which network. That would have been before we had an ABC affiliate here in central Mississippi, but the CBS and NBC did broadcast some of the ABC programs, had contracts.
I can't tell what kind of weird European sedan that is. They're crashing into the water in the intro.
Pretty cool. So, well, a recent poll shows that Gen Z is turning against capitalism as the Democratic Socialists of America are taking off. 9% of Americans younger than 30 have a, quote, very positive view of capitalism. That's in a poll that was conducted last week. That shows quite a stark contrast between Gen Z and the older generation. That would be me. I'm a boomer. I know Thomas hates boomers, so 33% of people older than 65 or those in the baby boomer generation said they have a positive view of capitalism. 23% of folks between 45 and 64. Now, that includes some of your Gen Xers and millennials. They view capitalism positively, but that's 23%. Those in the 30 to 44 age range, of course, that's closer to Gen Z, 15% approve of capitalism. 41% of respondents in this poll younger than 30, 41% had a negative or somewhat negative view of capitalism. 27% of 65 and older said they have a negative view. I think that sounds kind of high. So this is essentially what is driving this surge in popularity of democratic socialism. I honestly believe it's largely being driven, I've said this before, the incumbency, but another factor, I think, is this just expectation of everything being right now, today, instant. And that has been driven quite a bit by our digital world, because we're accustomed to getting every dadgum thing we want. I got to tell you, I had to make a call this morning to someone who provides service, I'll just put it that way, that I have a business relationship with, okay? I'm the consumer, they're the business, the vendor. And it's kind of unreasonable, but what I was asking for was a little unusual, and I had to get tossed around to a couple of people. And on the final handoff to someone who could help me, I was on hold. And it was probably 2 minutes. I found myself getting impatient. And I think that's just because we're so conditioned. I felt like it's unreasonable on my part. I kind of felt bad about myself, like, I get it. But we're just accustomed to that. Now, the good news is almost anything you need these days in your consumer to business relationships, you can just get without talking to anybody. That's good news. This was an unusual request, and it's not something that I could obtain just by logging into my account. So I had to talk to somebody. Now, I will say this. I dialed the number. This is pretty cool. I haven't seen this before. I dialed the number, and it got disconnected before there was an answer, before it was received and answered. I then got a text saying, hey, we saw your call. You need to talk to us. Hit this button. That's actually pretty cool. So that basically tells you that they have a very robust digital system. I appreciated that. But at my age, if I'm getting impatient, the young people who are way more conditioned to instant everything than me, I think that's what's going on. I really do. We've talked about this before, where there are some in this country that say this delayed gratification is actually racist. That's rooted in white European culture, right?
Well, the silver lining on the dark cloud that is young people embracing the stupidity of socialism is that same stupidity and immaturity and need for instant gratification usually keeps them from taking the time to wait in line and vote as well.
That's exactly right. A great point. I hadn't thought about that. And you've heard me say many times that if we don't figure out a way, I believe, to fully automate the elections process, and I know a lot of people get upset about that because, okay, that means no paper ballots, and folks feel that ensures election integrity. I respect that, understand that. I'm just making the point in trying to share the message and the warning. We're going to run out of voters if we don't figure this out, because the next generation, to your point, they're not going to go, if they got to go somewhere to register, they ain't even going to do that, much less get in their car, drive to a precinct, a polling location where they're assigned, and then wait in line, sign a piece of paper, fill out a piece of paper, scan. They ain't going to do it. They're just not. Now, we can sit here and cry about that all day long. Well, you just don't care. I'm just telling you that's the way we've conditioned society. I believe it is possible to implement totally secure, accurate, digital, automated election systems. We have the know-how to do that. I would argue, Rhino, and I know this is going to be probably received by some people in the audience, is hyperbole and maybe just incorrect assessment, more accurate than paper. I think we could do that. I really do. You think paper's perfect? Not even close. Coming right back with Don Redman. Stay with us.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends, and I can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We welcome now Don Redman, spokesman for AAA Mississippi. Hey, Don.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good. Just trying to get through this heat here in central Mississippi. And, of course, folks are out and about on the roads. And I noticed traveling yesterday down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, I don't know that I've seen this before. The signage along Highway 49 at one of the gas stations with diesel at over $6, had a 6 handle in front of it. And I don't know that I've seen that before in Mississippi. Maybe I just didn't pay attention that it happened in the past. But, man, that seemed awfully elevated.
Well, yeah, and the diesel in particular is one of those items that is in high demand, not only in the U.S., but globally. I mean, the previous high in Mississippi for diesel was $5.37, and that was set in 2022. That's when Russia invaded Ukraine. But right now, with the way the Ukrainian drones are attacking the refineries in Russia, that's really putting a lot of pressure on fuel prices. Again, particularly diesel, which is in high demand in Europe. And so the diesel that we're having is one of our leading exports. When I say we, I mean the U.S., one of our leading exports, and it's in high demand globally. And as long as those drone strikes continue at the refineries inside of Russia, that's going to have an impact on prices. And so it's definitely hurting us domestically. And I always try to remind folks that, yes, we are producing our own diesel, and yes, we're producing our own oil, but it's sold on a global market. So when there's a global demand for oil or global demand for diesel, it's a price that we're going to be paying even domestically. And that's why I think you'll see some of those higher prices for diesel, and why we're seeing elevated prices for gasoline right now as well.
In fact, the Department of Energy, Don, I'm sure you saw it a couple of weeks ago, estimated that the supply, the production of oil, would come in at about 600,000 barrels per day below pre-war levels through the end of 2027.
Yeah, I mean, this is I know that they're having a lot of hope that Saudi Arabia is working on their plan B to get some more oil into the market. But you also have to understand that they don't necessarily mind crude being at $100 a barrel. I mean, their economy's built on the price of crude.
Sure.
So it's a reality that we're going to probably face for the remainder of the year. Of higher gas prices, but again, you got two different wars going on, and just now do we really see Ukraine is punching back above its weight into Russia, and that's absolutely having an impact on fuel prices as well as the ongoing war with Iran.
Well, I caught an interview a couple of weeks ago with Mike Wirth on the Business Channel. He's the CEO of Chevron, and he was talking about how, in particular, the war in Ukraine and Russia, how it's destroyed lots of the facilities and the infrastructure that's used in the exploration, the extraction, the processing of oil. And he said, rebuilding those facilities anywhere from a month or two to years. And he thought that was going to continue to be a factor in the overall supply.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think that while the markets initially were shaken in 2022, and that's when we saw crude jump up to $117 a barrel. That's when we saw in Mississippi the highest prices ever for gasoline and all fuel petroleum products. That kind of calmed down as it looked like it's just going to be a trench warfare and just kind of stuff. But this whole new drone warfare that Ukraine has unleashed has changed everything. And you're exactly right, the infrastructure. And I think that's also, when you look into the war with the U.S. and Iran, the president has been very reluctant to go after the infrastructure, the total oil infrastructure for Iran, knowing that it's going to be a long time to rebuild. Once you blow it up, it's going to take a long time to rebuild, and hoping that there would be some kind of a structure there. But it doesn't look like Iran wants to go down that path. They want to blow it all up.
Yeah, and that would affect consumers here in the United States, just because we would destroy and maybe really have a major impact on Iran in the hopes that they would be a little more forthcoming in their negotiations. Fact is, that affects the global supply of oil, and that affects prices, and of course consumers would bear those higher costs here in the States.
Yeah, and people look at it and say, wait, the United States doesn't get any oil from Iran. How does it impact us? And again, it's sold on a futures market, and it's sold on a global market. So while the U.S. doesn't get any oil from Iran, there are parts of Europe that absolutely do, and account for about 20% of oil consumption. So they rely on crude coming through the Strait of Hormuz that Iran is constantly holding hostage, if you will, and that's affecting the prices. And so that means other countries, even such as India and China, obviously, have to go out to other markets to get their crude, and that's what's driving that price up. And that's why we're paying more at home, even though we're not getting any crude from Iran.
Don, tell us about this announcement by the EPA, yesterday, day before, on ending the summer blends I guess, early to try to decrease the price to consumers at the pump. Talk about that.
Yeah, usually that process starts underway at the end of this month, and that's where we call it a winter grade gasoline. So a winter grade gasoline is a little more volatile than summer grade, and yet it's cheaper and easier to make. The summer grade that we currently have in our fuel tanks is complies with the Clean Air Act, and so there's a more of a refining process through that. And it's obviously less volatile as well, so that it's more expensive to make that what we call the summer grade gasoline, which typically starts in February, March, has to be completed by May, and then by the time we get into September, October, they have to wrap up the winter grade. So they're just saying, let's do it now. It's cheaper, it's easier to produce, hopefully drive some of those prices down. But will it make a big difference to the consumer? When you got two different wars going on, I don't know that we're going to see a heck of a lot of savings, but it may slow down the increase for price. But I think that until there's some kind of resolution to these wars, that I wouldn't expect any big decreases at all in our fuel prices.
Environmentalists have been critical of this action, right? Indicating that this actually leads to more fumes, more emissions, more pollution coming from vehicles that burn this other blend in the summertime of year.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is kind of the political will right now. You're going into an election process, and they said we have got to somehow bring these prices down, even seeing fuel being released, oil being released from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, trying to keep those prices down. Unlike what we saw in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, where crude got up to $117. We had a brief spike in this war with Iran, but we really have only, rarely gone up above $100 a barrel. We're staying around that $80, $90 range, and I think that's pretty much where I think it's baked into the market now.
Yeah.
Even though as we go into the fall, typically demand diminishes. It's unlike the summer where you got high demand. You still got refinery capacity at 96%. That starts slowing down as we get into the fall and winter months. But I think that this is a move by the government just trying to keep these prices in check. Particularly, I think there's some political motivation and driving those prices down before the midterm.
No doubt. And, of course, we continue to draw from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and that's well below the 50% of capacity mark, expected to continue to decrease with the order to release oil to try to increase supply. Latest data I saw, Don, had it down to like 272 million barrels when the release ordered is complete, and that's of the capacity of 714 million. So we're already at the lowest level since they launched the thing back in the early 80s.
Yeah, I think since 1983. Yeah, I mean, it's a big concern. We saw one of the historic big drawdowns getting in 2022, 2023. Again, we had huge inflationary pressure on the economy, and the Biden administration started releasing some of that oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in hopes of trying to lower those prices again. Overall, I think there's a psychology reason for it, that it feels better, and the market kind of reacts just to they're releasing some of that crude. But what did that mean for the consumer? About 13 cents cheaper. In some markets, as much as 31 cents cheaper a gallon. But it wasn't like this huge, significant difference in those prices. But I think psychologically, it felt like they're doing something. And so I know this current administration has been expressed for us. Oh, I'm sorry.
I got you. No, you're good. Don Redman, spokesman, AAA Mississippi. Thanks, Don, for coming on. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. The great Paul Simon bumping us into this segment. So this was the Loves, by the way, in McGee that had the $6. I think it was $6.31, and I just checked it on the break. It's $6.099, effectively $6.10. So it came down from yesterday. That is certainly above the national average, but there are all kinds of factors that affect the price sold by a specific retailer or group of retailers. It just has to do with the flow of inventory. Are they still selling inventory they bought at a lower price? Or did they just order new, replenish, refresh their inventory at a higher price? Thus, they're charging the higher price at the pump. And we had somebody on the C Spire text line send us a photo of would be in Olive Branch, $5.39 for diesel. Just said there's some greed going on down south. And so I actually disagree with that. I do not feel like that a seller's pricing strategy is greed. The market will dictate whether or not that works. Where it becomes greed is when they pay government and they influence government to institute price controls or other policy that benefits them individually, independently. That is greed, in my view. But look, if you don't want to pay that price, go somewhere else, because the data I'm looking at shows that the average price in the state and in the country is certainly lower than that. I think $5.45 is what the current average price is in the country, that according to the United States Energy Information. You also got Gas Buddy. They track all that stuff. So that's higher than the average today. But again, if you don't like the price, you were talking about these truck drivers now. They're the biggest users of diesel, the big long-haul tractors that pull these 18-wheelers, the big trailers. They got all kinds of systems that help them figure out where they can get it at the lowest price.
And it depends on the trucking company. I mean, some trucking companies, they've got software in their navigation system, or they're set up to, they're going to tell the trucker, hey, you've got this stop in this many miles at gas at this price, or diesel at this price. Or you got this stop in this many miles with diesel at this price. Those are your options. And then you have other trucking companies that have fueling contracts.
Yeah.
Either with independent fueling providers or with truck stops.
Yeah.
And we had, I think it was Sam and Tupelo on the C Spire text line. How can the big chain truck stops get by with charging 75, 80 cents more for diesel than other places? I think that's why. I think if you're a truck stop with a big enough contract with a big enough trucking company, then any loss you're expecting from people driving by and going, well, I ain't paying that, they're making up for it because they got people having to come in and stop there.
But paying a below the advertised price because of the contracts they have, because of the volume. I mean, it's just economics 101 there. If you buy so much from me, I'll sell it to you at some formula that's lower than the advertised, published, full retail price. So yeah, because I looked, there was a bunch of trucks there, and they're getting fuel. I doubt they're paying that full price.
And you also have to take into account that a lot of places have gone to dynamic pricing, so the price will literally be different for the same product throughout the day.
Correct.
Based on demand expected for the time.
That is absolutely correct.
And you got to take into account, I mean, we've talked about the second-order thinking and the free market, but in an increasingly smaller and smaller world digitally, you have more and more people that have access to the information of what prices are in places that a couple generations ago would have required a lot more legwork.
Completely right. That's a good point. So another benefit of the digital world for sure. And, of course, that the retailers know that, and they have to adjust their pricing models and develop strategy around that as well. They understand that. On the C Spire text line, interesting to see the difference in prices from city to city. For instance, prices in Madison are on average about 20 cents more expensive than in Gluckstadt. Yeah, there's a lot of factors that enter into that as well. I get it. And as you know, Rhino, we used to have gas stations that pretty much just sold gas, oil, and had little vending machines in the little office of the station, the inside part of the station, where you could get the
little hanging metal rack of cracklins.
Get your peanuts.
Sunflower seeds hanging in the window.
But the margin is not made at the pump. The margin is made when you go inside, which most people do, and buy all that stuff that they make a lot more money on. So it is not an incredibly profitable business.
That's why you got to be careful when you go into certain shady convenience stores. You got to check that expiration date. They got it on clearance, and they're trying to make a big profit.
That's a good point. But that's where they make their money. Remember talking about that when Joe Biden was demanding you go out and lower those prices. We had to explain the model on that. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio after Fox News and SuperTalk News.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Middays. It's hour 2 of the program. On this
Friday, y'all,
we are in the Element Wealth studio. We thank you so much for joining us. We were just talking a little bit about price of gas, price of diesel in particular, and we got some folks weighing in with us, sending some messages on the C Spire text line. We appreciate the engagement. 601-879-4395. I think just overall, people are they're exhausted with the high price of gas. It really got cranked up back when this country launched attacks in Iran, and that interrupted supply, the movement of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Again, you heard Don Redman from AAA explain, as we have many times, it's a globally traded commodity. So it's not contained, meaning it's not that the oil we produce, we refine here, and we consume here. Rather, it is sold globally, and it finds its most efficient route for processing and down into usable fuels, and then distribution through the various retail channels and end users of those finished fuels. That's the way the system works. It's not that we're just independent as a country with respect to the oil we take out of the ground and the gas we use at the pump. They're not actually related. It's the gas at the pump is related to the global price of oil, which then, of course, figures into the cost of production of diesel and the gasoline fuels we put in our vehicles.
And another facet to that is, while the federal government for generations has been devaluing the dollar through reckless spending, especially on entitlements, the petrodollar is really one of the main components for strengthening the dollar and keeping it strong.
Yeah, that's right. It's
almost in spite of the federal government.
That is absolutely true, and that just has to do with this country having the strongest economy. So even with our economic warts, we're still stronger and better and more financially stable than all the others. They're worse, and that's why we still trade in petrodollars. And there's been attempts and discussions, and you've seen all the fear-mongering. I mean, it's been going on for 5 or 6 years or more than that. By the end of the year, we will be trading in rubles. You've seen it.
When the euro first came out.
Oh, it's exactly right. What was that, a couple of decades ago?
Fanning euros on yachts instead of $100 bills.
Yeah. So that really never came to pass.
No.
And won't, in my view. So that was
especially not the direction Europe's going at this point.
100%. That's, I think, overblown hyperbole and fear mongering for sure. But there's no doubt that the price of gas, it figures into elections. It is a political issue because it affects everything. The price of fuel affects everything else.
And I think your use of the word exhaustion is apropos. It's accurate because a lot of the complaints I've heard personally have come from where did the cheap gas go? You had some people that were being unrealistic and they wanted to go back to the gas prices that were experienced during COVID. But to recreate the global economy that got that price, you don't want it. But people experienced pretty low gas prices relative to today before Iran. And they're looking at it going, do something.
I think that's right.
It's taking too long.
Well, so I think my use of the word exhausted and how about weary may apply as well. Just ready for something to normalize. And right now that price is elevated and doesn't feel normal. And people are they're tired of it. It's stressing them out, weighing on them. And I think this is one of the reasons that the young folks in the polls we talked about are sort of turning their attitude towards socialism to be more favorable, looks like to me, than ever. I don't know any polls were ever conducted that showed that high favorability ratings for socialism or certainly anti-capitalism the way we're seeing. Now, a lot of that, I believe, is attributed to this issue of instant gratification. How they just want it now.
I think you might have had pockets of the country where it was more popular prior to our involvement in World War II.
Yeah.
But not at a nationwide scale, no.
Yeah. And that, I think...
Because, I mean, you remember you had... Well, you don't remember, but you might have learned about... They had Nazi rallies at Madison Square Garden.
I remember. Yeah. Absolutely. Remember Occupy Wall Street? I remember speaking and writing about that. What was that, 10 years or so ago?
So, I mean, there have been wackos getting followings for as long as people have been people. And within living history, we've had certain parts of the country that have bought in more than others. But, yeah, having an entire generation across the country seemingly being okay with having daddy government decide everything for them is saddening.
I think, however, the difference today is reflected in the fact that candidates who are not shy about promoting themselves as card-carrying Democrat socialists are winning primaries on the Democrat side. We haven't seen them necessarily prevail in a general yet. We're going to see that put to the test here in November. I think that's what's different. I don't know that would have occurred, say, 10 years ago, to your point, with the pockets of rallies and stuff. I don't know that there was enough traction and enough people that would have voted that way. That's different. That's changed. And it's fracturing the Democrat Party. I mean, it's causing problems for them because many of them, of course, see that there are districts where that cannot win, or even states. You look at El Said, the Democratic nominee in Michigan for U.S. Senate, and now we have a Democrat nominee for U.S. Senate in Florida that's a Democrat socialist. You wouldn't think that happened in Florida, and she won by, as the president likes to say, a lot. She won by a lot and didn't spend hardly any money doing it. So I think that's what's different. You got the crazy person in Colorado that we covered that won a congressional seat, took down a 15-term and establishment Democrat incumbent. I think there's also a strong anti-incumbent attitude across the country. Just seems to gain. I mean, we've been steadily going in that direction, but that seems to have intensified quite a bit. You got, 3 candidates in New York, self-avowed Democrat socialists. You got the mayor of the largest city in the country. I think that's what's different, is that you're just seeing it gain in popularity. To a great extent, I think it's this. Well, I'm not happy with the current situation. Let's change it. Not really understanding, well, what you're voting for and the change that you're advocating for and supporting is going to make things worse. I don't think they get that.
I think that's a factor. I think another factor, maybe not even a competing factor, just a similar factor, is young people especially are captivated and captured by trends.
Totally.
I mean, that's human nature, especially in young
By the
people.
way, nothing new. That's nothing new.
No, it's been.
That's the way God wired us.
It's like I say, people have been people as long as people have been people.
Yep.
Saying that, the trend is to be anti-establishment, to be anti-capitalist, to be a revolutionary, and that's seemingly been a trend for the young people for a generation or two.
It's in vogue. I agree.
Usually you see things like that swing one way and then back another, and then one way and then back another. Like you have one generation that's more liberal and another generation that's more conservative because you don't want to be the previous generation.
To some extent, you're seeing that play out with the anti-data center movement as well. But I wanted to touch on something you said a minute ago that's so true. We kind of got conditioned to a great extent, super low gas during the COVID era, right? We shut down all the airlines, as an example, and told everybody to go home and not go to work. So it stands to reason, you remember for a period there, oil was below. Hey, we'll pay you if you come take it. It's costing us to maintain it. But the price we paid for that doesn't get considered second order thinking was the $5 trillion, $6 trillion of money the government dropped out of helicopters, which drove inflation. That's the price we paid because that beat the economy down, and that was intended to offset the economic activity that essentially just evaporated.
But to your point, we had low prices when we had an excess of supply.
Exactly right. Coming right back with Kelly Bennett.
John Ravens. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. Rest assured, don't get your money's worth. Ladies show, it happened out at the Aussie show. It's dynamo.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks for being with us today. It's our pleasure to welcome now Kelly Bennett, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. What's going on, Kelly?
Morning, Gerard.
What's going
Morning
on?
right now?
Yeah, man.
Well, we had some great news today. Just got this from Governor Tate Reeves' office. The number of jobs in Mississippi has reached a new high. According to Governor Reeves, Mississippi's total non-farm employment reached a new record high in July with 1,196,200 jobs. There's some good numbers since he took office. Let me go over these for you. Since Reeves took office, the state has had an all-time low unemployment rate multiple times, the second fastest growing GDP in the United States. Mississippi was second in the nation for household income growth and had the fourth fastest growing per capita income in America. Mississippi is second in America for growth in job openings since 2020, with hiring demand up nearly 20%. The U.S. state average, by the way, was minus 9.6%. So, and you know what I think, Gerard? This is my theory. We know, because we live here, how great things are in Mississippi for the most part. I feel like Mississippians are just good people that don't like to brag. And that's where,
It could
you
be
know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So when the governor's office comes out, I'm like, yay, somebody said it. Say it out loud.
Well, and I agree. And I think, in my view, the best part is that we sort of are getting attention across the nation, and to a great extent, we're kind of shocking the nation. We've always been just looked upon from other states, especially by people who have never been here. Like the governor likes to say, they come here one time, we pretty much got them hooked. But those who have never been here, they don't look too favorably upon our state. And I think that was kind of shaped by Hollywood of 40, 50 years ago that always portrayed our state in a negative light. And they're just a little astonished by these massive gains in education. But here on the economic front, and the governor, I think, totally is proper and appropriate for highlighting these successes.
Absolutely. And, you know, you talk about the Mississippi Miracle and our education success, and we have lawmakers and state leaders on SuperTalk Mississippi all the time that go to D.C. and they come back going, oh, so they were joking about, oh, you do have your teeth and you are wearing shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That negative impression of Mississippi, you know, it's still pretty rampant.
I lived and worked in California, Southern California, in 1980. Okay, and I was literally asked, being on this project with a bunch of folks, most of whom graduated from big name private schools, and some from the West Coast, some from the East Coast. I'm the only Southerner there that was assigned to this particular project. About 30 of us on the team, and I got asked if I had ever had owned a suit, because we had to wear a suit to work. That was the dress code before I came to work for the firm. Like, I got asked that, and how many cows I had, and if I had running water. And they were serious. They were dead serious about that.
It's pretty ridiculous, actually, I think. And, you know, when you consider all the things that Mississippi has, like rocket scientists literally at work at Stennis Space Center in Hancock County, all the military installations that we have and the crazy things they're doing there, the aerospace development that Mississippi is gaining a little more notoriety for. In fact, an aerospace manufacturing facility officially expanded in Lowndes County this week. Aurora Flight Sciences held a ribbon cutting for a 50,000 square foot expansion at its manufacturing site in the Golden Triangle. This represents an investment of around $43 million in Mississippi. And then another big economic development announcement, automotive parts manufacturer Solero Technologies expanding its operations in Water Valley. That $14 million investment will create 86 new jobs in North Mississippi. And a company that's been doing business in Boonville for over 6 decades is investing $326,000 to expand its manufacturing capabilities. We're talking about Marathon Cheese, a custom cheese packaging and transportation company. They're actually headquartered in Marathon, Wisconsin, but they opened their Boonville location in 1962. There are 192 full-time workers at the facility right now. And this new investment is going to create 39 new jobs.
Good news.
And that's just this week's economic development news.
Yeah, really, really good news. No doubt about it. So talk to us about the Public Service Commission. What are they kind of up in arms about?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the stories about the Holly Springs Utility District and how they can't seem to keep the power on for their customers. I mean, these customers are going days, hours. It's a frequent thing where their power goes out. So they've put Holly Springs Utility District into a receivership. Well, this week, the Mississippi Public Service Commission announced they aren't happy with a judge's decision to appoint Michael F. Watson as receiver over the Holly Springs Utility District. Now, I want to clarify, this is not the same Michael Watson who serves as Mississippi's Secretary of State. Same name, different guy.
Yep.
The Public Service Commission is preparing to file a motion to reconsider his appointment. Watson had been working as a consultant for the city prior to this appointment. They argued that the judge found the current management of the utility district is grossly inefficient and unresponsive to the needs of their customers. And since Watson has basically been employed by the city, this doesn't represent a real change in management. So we'll see what happens there. By the way, the PSC also announced this week they're planning to request a comprehensive forensic audit of the utility. That's been an ongoing issue for years and years.
It certainly have. So we got redistricting hearings that are sort of touring the state right now. What do we know about that?
Well, the first redistricting hearing happened Tuesday in Itawamba County. I really encourage everybody to go to supertalk.fm and look up the schedule and participate in these redistricting meetings. Now, we know that Governor Tate Reeves has said, look, we're going to redraw the congressional, legislative, and judicial districts. And it's just a matter of timing. That's what these public meetings are about. And what our state lawmakers are doing is basically they're in attendance at these public meetings. I think there's a series of, it's around 10 of them that are scheduled over the next couple of months. And they're just sitting and listening. They're not offering input. They're not saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is an opportunity for the public to make their voices heard. And you can go online to find out when one of those meetings is near you.
Yeah, good stuff that they're traveling around the state. And I have heard that some folks are attending and they're posing questions to the legislators that are conducting these hearings. We'll see how that factors into whatever action they may or may not take with respect to redistricting coming up, that's for sure. The Fat Cat Report. We had Douglas Carswell from Mississippi Center for Public Policy on earlier in the week discussing this. What you got?
According to a new report from the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, more than 30 local school district superintendents actually make more money than Governor Tate Reeves, whose salary is $160,000.
You know, the average school superintendent in Mississippi is making about $145,000. Now, that is roughly 7 times what a starting teacher's salary is. It's nearly 5 times what a nurse is making. It's a significant amount of money. It's a significant cost. The total cost of paying for these school superintendents is well over $20 million a year.
That's the Center for Public Policy's president and CEO, Douglas Carswell. Now, he also told us the report questions why 103 districts with fewer than 3,000 students each need their own superintendent.
The House came up with a great proposal to actually tackle school superintendent pay and to cap it. The problem is that, like so many good conservative ideas, it dies on contact with the Senate. And there's a real roadblock to real reform in the Senate.
If you're curious, the highest paid superintendent in the state runs Jackson Public Schools. They make $280,000 a year for a C-rated district. And he talked about, and I thought this was kind of interesting because it goes hand in hand with a lot of, let's call it pending school choice legislation. Yeah. As they meet on this, state lawmakers are meeting on this
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. That's the great Hall & Oates. On the C-Spire text line, for the sake of the country, I hope El Said gets blown out in the general. He, of course, the Democrat socialist who won the Democratic nomination for United States Senate in the state of Michigan. I think he's facing off with, is it Senator Mike Peters? Is that right, Rhino? That coming up in the general? And the polls do show him trailing a bit in that particular race. Is that who he's going to face on the Republican side?
Mike Rogers.
Rogers. Okay. Thank you. Who is he the incumbent, or are they replacing, is it somebody that's currently sitting in that seat in Michigan? Haven't paid too much close attention to that particular state.
I don't think he's the incumbent.
I don't either. Somebody is stepping down, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Is he coming out of the House, I think, right? There's a state, yeah, that's right, a representative on the House side that's flipped over, running for the Senate, won the Republican nomination, and somebody's stepping down in the Senate in Michigan. As you have the same situation.
Democrat incumbent Gary Peters is not seeking a third term.
Okay, that's where I got the Peters from. I got Gary Peters and Mike Rogers. I had the names reversed. I knew there was a Peters involved in there. That's exactly right. Thank you. So that I think it looks good, honestly, for the Republicans in that particular race.
Republicans have not won a U.S. Senate race in Michigan since '94. That particular Senate seat since 1972. And a non-presidential statewide election since 2014.
Okay. So
historically an uphill battle.
No doubt. The history related to the Senate representing Michigan and that seat in particular doesn't bode well for Republican Mike Rogers. But I think I need to look it up. The polls show him actually leading the nutcase El Said. There's been some more baggage, as I recall, Rhino, that has surfaced regarding Said. Some of the old social media posts that don't go away. Was it he who said that he hated fireworks on July 4th? Somebody just said that recently, and that surfaced. I hate fireworks. Essentially criticizing, condemning July 4th, taking a shot at the nation's birthday, where it is customary to shoot fireworks to celebrate the nation's founding. So, but the polls, I think, have Mr. Rogers in the lead slightly over the Democrat socialist El Said. We shall certainly see where all that goes for sure. Yeah, Caleb Saylor's our multimedia journalist in the news department around the corner said, he also said football embodies toxic masculinity. So that's all stuff that's come up in the last few days since he won a couple of weeks ago, the election there, the primary there. So I like the...
I'm trying to remember what he said about Fetterman. I think he called Fetterman an ogre or something like that. Angered some people.
Yeah, so we'll see. On the other hand, the crazy person, James Tallarico, over there in Texas, I think he's got an edge in the various polls currently over Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He, the Republican candidate for United States Senate to replace Senator John Cornyn. And Tallarico, the Democrat who was just all over YouTube. He bought all the ad space on YouTube. He's appealing to YouTubers, at least in the short little initial section, unless you're a premium subscriber that you got to endure. He's appealing for $5 or something like that. But I think the polls show him up slightly in Texas. That would be a really hard one to poll and call, I would say.
I would wonder, did those same polls have Beto O'Rourke up?
Seems like,
remember, there have been polls in the past where they got really excited, like, oh, look, Beto's going to win. Beto, look, he's in the lead. He's going to win. And then got completely demolished.
I do absolutely remember that. Kind of like the polls.
And Tallarico is 13 levels slimier than Beto O'Rourke ever was.
It's true. Looking at the various polls right now, 2 have Paxton up. That would be the Emerson College poll and the Southern Cal Strategies poll by 1. The rest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 other polls have Tallarico up from 2 points to 5 points. Read into it what you will, right? Last week, the shock of Francesca Hong, who went down, she was leading in all the polls. And you shared with us one of these polling organizations is being accused of manipulating the polls, right?
Manipulating the prediction markets with the polls.
Okay, there you go. Got to remember that now. The prediction markets factor into this stuff these days. And so they were off by a lot. Their particular polls that were used in the prediction markets.
The name was Median Strategies or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, they had Francesca Hong at like 23% lead. They had Karen Bass with a double-digit lead. They had several polls that they were an outlier if you lined them all up. But the polls that they were outliers on also seemed to be the prediction markets that had the most money being bet or wagered.
Yeah, it was city manager, I think, is his official position, David Crowley, who ended up winning that particular race. But you're right, all the polls had him down, and it was a bit of a shock. I mean, it was like a foregone conclusion she was going to win. Didn't happen. So, look, some of these polls are good. They're accurate. I personally like Rasmussen. I've always found them to be the most reliable, but they ain't perfect. And polling's a lot different an endeavor today than it was in the old days when everybody had a landline and somebody would call you and ask you questions, and they would record that and feed that into the systems and calculate, right? That's completely changed now. So
I mean, that changed with caller ID.
Yeah, exactly right.
I don't recognize that number.
Yeah.
So they go to machine.
The metadata being displayed on the screen of the phone. Correct. But back in the old rotary phone or even
phone's ringing,
touchtone, yeah, you just picked it up. You didn't know. So that's how that stuff is changed. That's why I'd still question the Bureau of Labor Statistics methodology in calculating the labor force participation rate. By the way, I got to give a shout out to my friends at the American Subcontractors Association, the Mississippi chapter. That's where I was yesterday. Appreciate Dave filling in, and spoke to them. And it's my custom, Rhino, to ask every group that I speak to, who's ever been called by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Let me just add that no one in that group's ever been called as well. And I've asked this question, posed that question to countless groups across the state. I've yet to find a person in the state of Mississippi that's been called by the BLS to ask them if they're working to calculate the labor force participation rate. Not sure. But the U.S. Senate is certainly interesting the way it is shaping up, where all that is going to go. I think that Texas, I think it's in play. I don't know that Tallarico ends up winning at the end of the day. More likely, there is a flip in North Carolina. I think that's where it's most likely to occur. A possibility in Iowa as well. We'll see what happens there. Alaska, maybe. Maine, maybe. But I would certainly put North Carolina at the top of the list at this point of where the Republicans are likely to lose a seat. Would still maintain the majority. It is currently Republicans have 53 of the 100 seats, so technically could afford to peel off one or two, actually even three, because the vice president could cast the deciding vote in a 50-50 situation. But the president has announced a deal to cut ground beef prices. That on the other side of the break from the Element Wealth studio.
Poly up.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring. Bound by wild desire, I fell into a ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So, we appreciate you being with us today. Thanks so much. The great Johnny Cash there, Ring of Fire. So the president announced that he will allow up to 300,000 metric tons of product for ground beef to be imported over the next 3 months without being subject to out-of-quota tariffs. He said importers had agreed the ground beef would be sold at 25% below market prices. So you just got to be honest here now. This is all political. I get it, because like it or not, the economy, the cost of running a household is the top issue to voters in virtually every election. I'll have to give that nutcase crazy James Carville some credit, Rhino, when he made that now famous, oft-repeated statement, it's the economy, stupid. You got to give him credit for that. He's a wacko, but he's pretty savvy politically. And he is absolutely castigating his own party and the Democrat Socialists, and he certainly jumps all over them about all the DEI and the radical gender ideology nonsense. I give him that. He's just insufferable. He's annoying. He's crazy. But I think there's an attempt here by the administration to try to quell voters' concerns over pricing. So I guess what I don't get here, Rhino, though, why just ground beef? How do you do that? I mean, it's beef, of course, is cut into and it produces lots of different types, categories, ground beef being one of them, typically considered kind of at the low end, right, of the beef products that you see in the grocers' freezers. It's you got beef, you got steak, you got roast, and I'm no expert on this, but I've done a little shopping in my life. For sure, but that it kind of ranks at the bottom, and it's certainly relative to filet mignon or prime cuts per pound is the way it's sold. So here's what the president said. If I can get that for you, I just looked up his Truth Social Truth post. Well, let's see, I lost it. Can't get to it, but he is very, very emphatic about this and has made an announcement, but it was not received very well, I must say, by the industry, by the cattle industry. I was taken aback by their response to it. And let's see, what did they say here? The cattle industry, I got there. Yeah, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is disappointed by the president's statement. While America's cattle producers share the goal of keeping groceries affordable for consumers, flooding the market with government-subsidized below-market beef is not the way to rebuild the American cattle herd. Now, we've talked to Senator Andy Berry not too long ago. He, of course, a cattle farmer as his occupation, a respected figure on everything related to that industry. And, you know, he made the point that, hey, things are good right now. The price is elevated for those of us that have cattle. That was one of the points you remember he made, that, man, if you go try to buy cattle at the auction to just increase your herd, or maybe to even start, you pay a premium for that because of the supply of cattle, which was devastated with, I believe it's disease and drought, if I'm not mistaken, just thinned the herd, and measures have been taken to increase the herd size because it's starting to affect the demand, right, the consumption, and because the price got kind of high. I mean, if you've been out to a fine dining restaurant and ordered a steak, it's incredible how much a dang steak costs. So the president's strategy here to drive the price, at least of ground beef, down is to allow import of beef into the country without tariffs. And this is a pretty strong departure from earlier tariffs imposed on those who export and sell into this country. And the Cattle Beef Association is not too happy with the president's move here. We'll see what that does to the price of ground beef in the grocery store. Coming right back after Fox News Super Talk News.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello? You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Hour 3, the afternoon portion of MidDays, live from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
The vice president, currently addressing a crowd at a steel plant in Ohio, talking about the administration's strategy and efforts to rebuild the manufacturing industry in this country. And certainly some gains have been made there. So I got to tell you that in the first year of the president's term, we actually shed manufacturing jobs. We're starting to see manufacturers hire again. So the number of jobs is slowly but steadily increasing. That's because of a great deal of investment by domestic and companies from abroad that are building out manufacturing facilities, factories in this country. And, of course, they're hiring people to work in those factories. So that's a good thing. You know, thinking again about this very controversial matter of data center build-outs in the state and certainly in the country, more than anything, abroad as well, but certainly domestically overall. Started thinking about how, and again, a little second-order thinking, one of the reasons, Rhino, that we're seeing a resurgence in manufacturing is because of data centers. There's lots of stuff that has to be manufactured. Not only IT infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, other physical infrastructure, racks and the like, power distribution units.
Raised flooring.
All the above. Inside the data centers, right? But the stuff you got to build and make to build the data centers. John Deere reported a very rosy outlook, not because they think they're going to sell more tractors to farmers and to our agricultural industry. They said, yeah, constructors are buying lots of our equipment because they're building data centers. So that's driving growth at John Deere. And again, it's a bit hypocritical, in my view, of some of these communities in some of these states who are saying no to the data centers, but these communities, these states heavily rely on the manufacturing industries that are building the stuff that's used by data center construction or inside the data centers themselves. They would be hurting without that industry growing the way it is. It's not just the physical data center building itself that should be considered as how it impacts economic activity and how it produces something of value for the economy.
The same way a vacuum cleaner manufacturing plant is not just the vacuum cleaner manufacturing plant.
Totally.
You got the people supplying the bags, you got the people supplying the components for the motor, or they're supplying the motor, you got the people supplying the housing, you got the people supplying the electrical plug and the cable, you got all of those people are part of the ecosystem.
But that just doesn't seem to enter into the conversation, I guess.
Because people can wrap their head around putting together a vacuum cleaner. They can't wrap their head around a bunch of electrons, flipping ones and zeros and microscopically small microchips that they never learned about. Never took the time to.
Yeah. And it turns out that it's the Midwestern states where you have lots of that manufacturing. And that's nothing new. That's been a haven for manufacturing, the so-called Rust Belt with steel and everything. And originally it was said because you use so much steel in manufacturing, it just made sense to put manufacturing plants of things that use steel close to the steel smelters, right? That's kind of what the supply chain design was all about back then.
Yeah, because every mile you move something heavy like steel costs money.
Costs money, right. And you're right. It being heavy means it costs even more money. But lots of towns, certainly in the 70s, started to decline when the steel mills and the auto plants shuttered. A lot of that moved overseas, and that kind of vacuumed up that area. Lots of the manufacturing relocated as well, especially automobile factories. Right here to the south, we've benefited from that. Alabama, big time, has benefited. North Carolina, Georgia, all have benefited from the kind of migration of automobile manufacturing into those states. But fast forward, the modern day surge in manufacturing that's occurring in Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, they are benefiting from the data center explosion. They make a lot of stuff that's used in the building of a data center and then the outfitting of the data center for the things that are inside. We, here in Mississippi, we just secured a manufacturing plant, new one, going up in Marshall County, Jabeel. They make stuff that goes in data centers. It makes sense for them to be in Mississippi because they're close to whom their customers are. And so I think they're scheduled to have announced they're going to hire 2,000 people at a relatively high wage, certainly higher than our per capita and median household income. So bottom line is there are factories in these Rust Belt towns that are starting to see their business improve quite a bit just because they're getting orders from these folks that are spending trillions building out data centers. I saw an estimate this morning. I had a hard time wrapping my head around it. $14 trillion. This was a market analyst a respected market analyst with multi-billions of dollars they call it assets under management, AUM. This was on the Business Channel real early this morning. And he was estimating $14 trillion will be invested over the next 5 years by the hyperscalers and others. And they said it's based on demand. They're seeing a surge in demand for AI. People are paying for it. And that is used to finance this growth. There's a lot of concerns about them borrowing money and NVIDIA stepping in and serving as a backstop on some of that debt and all sorts of arrangements like that. Those are valid concerns, no doubt about it. But the good news is the demand is off the charts, and I think we're just getting started. And if companies in particular are investing that much and willing to bear that expense, that means they're seeing returns, certainly expecting returns. So this is a good thing, but the actual construction is driving demand from the manufacturers of the items, the goods that are used not only in the construction, but also, of course, inside the facilities as well. So making the Midwest great again. How about that? Because they've been kind of in a manufacturing decline for some time. I did find what the president said. I'll read it to you about the beef tariffs. Today, I concluded a deal to substantially lower the price of ground beef for working American families. As everyone knows, under President Biden, beef prices soared at their fastest rate, and the American beef herd fell to its smallest size in modern history. As we work to rebuild this herd and help our ranchers for the next 90 days, the United States will allow up to 300,000 metric tons of ground beef to be imported with no out-of-quota tariff. And then they're going to agree to sell it for 25% below market price. So I'll have to say, Rhino, I've got some friends that know that I'm a very staunch pro-capitalist free enterprise, that I'm not crazy about government intervention in markets. I'm not changing my position on that, but I've got some Democrat friends that are sending me texts. Wait, this is capitalism, and so I get it. I'm not crazy about this, and our beef farmers aren't as well, but I understand what the president is trying to do. He's trying to provide some relief in the grocery store. People are complaining about that. And he's also trying to protect Republican control in the midterms. There's unfortunate that there's a political component to this, because that would make things worse if, in my view, if the Democrats were to prevail.
Am I missing something? Didn't he just basically lift the tariff on the over quota? So they're already importing beef.
Yes.
They were just going to have to pay a penalty to import more.
Correct.
Now they don't have to pay a penalty to import more.
That's basically what this is. Yeah.
Got it.
So, look, I'm for this because I'm not a big fan of tariffs. So I kind of think we're getting back to what I think should be the more... I'm
just trying to figure out how they think that's not capitalism.
No, I agree, because they feel like that's intervening. I actually think the tariffs are more interventionist than removing the tariffs.
I mean, it wouldn't be capitalism if the government was buying it and handing it out, but they're not doing that.
Coming right back.
Attention, adoring fans!
It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So this lifting of the tariffs, I actually think is a good thing. Get the tariffs out of it. But I understand that could cause problems for domestic beef farmers, because now they're dealing with what will be lower price beef that would drive their prices down is what will happen.
For ground beef.
Ground beef, that's right. And that will cut into their profit.
Which is supposed to be the cheapest type of beef.
Yeah. And there are grades of that, right? You got the ground beef, ground chuck, and so forth. So, I mean, you could even ground filet, right? Prime meats as well, prime cuts. But that's where we are. I think that's a 90-day reprieve is what the president announced on these tariffs, the overquoted tariffs. So, and the beef farmers are doing well now domestically, but for years the price was depressed and it caused problems for them. I know a lot of people feel like Paula Meridian says this. They look into the monopoly by a few beef processing plants. So, Paul, you realize, though, that few automatically says it's not a monopoly. It's not a monopoly. So
more like a cartel.
Now, if they're colluding on price fixing, it's against the law. Can't do that. If somebody could prove that, file a lawsuit, prove that, yeah, that could possibly have an impact. They're not just like incredibly profitable like you may think. It's not like crazy margins like the technology companies make. But you can't deny the fact that the shortage of cattle, the herd, that's the main factor that's driven the price of beef up. The four major processors in the country would seem to be sufficient to have a robust competitive environment. Could there be more? Sure, which may make it even more competitive. But it would be extremely difficult. Now, there's some reports that they're losing money right now because there's not enough beef to process. They have a very high fixed cost, don't have enough beef coming in to process. Therefore, they don't have enough finished goods, if you will, enough input and finished goods to spread those fixed costs over. So whether they process one cow or 1,000, their fixed costs are high and set and are borne by the company. So not sure what the solution is other than to increase the size of the herd, which still is down from multi-year drought and, of course, the restriction on imports. But looks like the president is addressing the imports, but that's to the chagrin of the cattle industry. I think that's kind of what happens when you have a global market like that. It just makes it more difficult. Also says, Paul says, 64, I'll be working until I'm 68. I appreciate any type of break in prices I can get. Yeah, I don't have the financial guidance I needed when I was younger, so not in good shape like some other people. I suspect you'll be fine, though, Paul, and I know you've worked hard and deserve a healthy, happy, enjoyable retirement. So, Gary in the Berg, what are you saying here? Gary, saying so no to AI and all that stuff, how the computer and the Terminator are coming out of it to get all of us. So no to rangefinders on the golf course and yes to yardages on sprinkler heads in the fairway. I say yes to bumper music. There you go. Could those towns against the data centers be more upset about the tax breaks, which impacts their community far greater than this data center itself? That's actually probably one of the most misunderstood aspects, the tax breaks, and doesn't really take into consideration the full picture. The fact is, what those towns get, Hammy and Hattiesburg wrote this on the C Spire text line, is a massive amount of tax revenues. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. AWS in Mississippi, in Madison County, will end up being the largest taxpayer in the state by far. And that's with a waiver of income taxes, and if they meet certain milestones and certain thresholds, also a waiver on sales taxes. Those revenues go to the state. Income taxes, sales taxes, an exemption, if you will. But with respect to the ad valorem taxes they're paying, the property taxes, which go to schools, counties, and cities, massive. So, and here's the way to think about that. Before you got no data centers, you got zero income taxes, sales taxes from the data center operator. Then you add the data center, you still got zero, no change. Income taxes, sales taxes. But you got zero property taxes before the data center. After the data center, massive property taxes. Net benefit. 0, 0, 0 versus 0, 0, massive amount. Net benefit, net increase in taxes. Even the president said they're a gold mine, is what he said. Cash cows. He strongly encouraged and to some extent even admonished governors and mayors for issuing moratoriums and pushing back, said every single one of you ought to be recruiting these facilities because of the positive economic impact they make on the area. Interesting. Jim from Caledonia says, what the hell's a data center? You just used one, by the way, Jim, to send that message. These are just, these are hardened, secure buildings is what they are, that are explicitly designed to house IT infrastructure. That would consist of
a warehouse full of computers.
That's basically it. The difference is, Rhino, it's
running computers.
Yeah, not in boxes waiting to be shipped out for somebody to plug in and use. The difference, though, it back to the hardened, secure, typical warehouse wouldn't be built, of course, to those standards. You wouldn't concern yourself with something that could take the building down, like a weather event. But in a data center, that's pretty critical because there's data, and it's data that belongs to people in there, and it's data that is powering organizations that rely on it.
So a warehouse in a bunker full of running computers.
Great way to describe it. So, and honestly, I thought for years about the opportunity, because I knew this was going to happen, this data center explosion 20-something years ago. I could just see that this was going to be the more common way to consume information technology in this sort of centralized, virtualized, beefed up fashion, which is what data centers really are. You're centralizing all that rather than every organization have their own little silo of IT equipment, software in the closet somewhere, which was not hardened, not secure, very unreliable, not backed up, et cetera, et cetera. It made sense to kind of pool those resources and then sell those out, distribute those out on a subscription model. That's essentially what these data centers do. But I always thought it would be difficult for Mississippi to recruit these big facilities in here, even before they started building them. I knew
it's basically the equivalent of, instead of every farmer setting up a stand at the end of his driveway selling his produce, they conglomerate at a farmer's market to sell their produce all at one location.
Yeah, it's economies of scale.
Instead of every business having their own computer rack in the back room taking up space, they all conglomerate in one big room, and everybody shares the space.
And sharing the expense.
Same exact concept.
And sharing in the expense as well.
Yeah.
But getting way more powerful, way more secure environment than if they had it on their property. Because you're not going to build on your property to the standards that someone who's in the business of delivering that service. But where I was going was, I always thought it would be difficult to recruit them into Mississippi because of our risk of weather. What's happened, as you know, Rhino, is that this is amazing, isn't it? It happens every time. Humans figured out a way. They innovated in construction techniques. And they figured out a way to build data centers in a hardened fashion that can withstand 250 miles per hour winds. You could do that 20 years ago, you just couldn't afford it. Now we figured out a way with new materials, new designs, and they've innovated and come up with an approach that is resistive and is hardened against the elements and against weather, and that's why we can have those big facilities now right here in Mississippi. Coming right back.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
So she said, what's the problem, baby? What's the problem? I don't know. Well, maybe I'm in love. Think about it every time.
Yeah, so just kind of following up on that. You know, that's what's happened, Rhino, is that we have developed new materials, new construction techniques and approaches, and that we've always got lots of solutions to hard problems. Initially, they're expensive. It's like, yeah, that would work, but it's not economically viable. So the quest and the goal is always, okay, how do we solve that problem, but do it in a way that is affordable, that's economically viable? That is the problem that has confounded humans since the beginning of time.
And one of the most prevalent examples are flat screen TVs.
Exactly.
In the earliest days of flat screen TVs, the only technology available to make them that thin was plasma screens.
Yeah.
And a flat screen TV, barely bigger than your tube TV, that you could go buy for a couple $100, would cost you several $1,000s.
I bought one. I remember. Yeah. No, that's a perfect example.
And then they figured out, oh, well, we could use LED and LCD. And that's a lot cheaper than plasma. And we can do it a lot thinner. And you keep iterating and iterating and iterating to the point now where you can go buy a 60-inch flat screen for $400 at Wally World.
Yeah, it's dirt cheap.
And it's 3 times bigger than the $12,000 plasma screen was.
And with better resolution on top of that. So, no, that's a perfect example. I remember trying to think of the resolution. Is it 2560 by 1940 or something? That was considered super high res. And when those first came on the market, one of the first manufacturers of those monitors, NEC known for their video products, a Japanese company, and so I bought 2 of their big flat screen high res monitors, but I had to buy an NVIDIA video card to drive it. Now that's standard issue componentry on the chipset on the motherboard of every dang personal computer. I think I paid like $800. This was 20 years or so ago, but I had the best resolution. Now they're all better than that.
That's because you were dual monitoring.
That's right. I was dual monitoring, and that's exactly right. But that's
because the computers that had monitors, which you got to go pretty far back before they did. But once it became pretty much standard operating procedure for computers to have a monitor, they came with the drivers to run that monitor.
That's right.
You had to buy the separate computational capability of the NVIDIA chip or NVIDIA board to have 2 monitors.
That's good. That's exactly right. But that's common today, right? To even have multiple monitors. I think that board that I have has 3 ports on it for the mini video USB interface. So, yeah,
through wired connections and wireless connections, the laptop I use at home can be seen on 4 screens.
Yeah.
And it came with that capability.
That's pretty cool.
And it's not new. It's like 5 years old now.
Heck, I remember selling what was called color graphics. CGA, IBM introduced that. 16 colors. Before we had VGAs, what came after that, video graphics array. That was like in the early 90s, I think, VGA. Those were still big screens, big boxy monitors, weren't flat screens. But that's a good point. It's the evolution. So it wasn't that scientists And engineers didn't know how to get that. It's just they couldn't do it affordably. And that's exactly what's happened in the evolution of construction techniques for these hardened buildings. You wouldn't want to build a data center in an area such as Mississippi that's prone to 200-mile-an-hour tornadoes. That would, when you think about $1.5 billion in a building, that's a lot. And by the way, you couldn't afford the insurance. In fact, you probably couldn't get insurance, and you wouldn't want to do that. So, only point I'm making is that brilliant people think about these problems and they address them and they design solutions to those problems. And we solve those problems and we keep moving forward. That's been the evolution of humans forever. When I was going to Wall Street pitching for capital, and I'd always get some pushback, of course, about what the future of the industry was like. That's what they get paid to do, is to handicap that, speculate, create a risk profile before they start parking money. That's what investors do. And
to make sure you know your stuff.
Yeah. Well, I tell people what they wanted to do was look me in the eye and make sure I was going to get them their money back with a return. That's really what they cared about more than anything. Do I trust that guy's going to take care of my money and get me some money back? I know that sounds simple, but it's really the truth. And there's a lot of gut feel, as you know, involved in that. And you're right. When you stand in front of them, if you don't know your stuff, you're done. You're out. Oh, get out of here. You're stupid. You don't know what you're doing. And you better be able to do it without any notes, by the way. You got to start referring to your financial statements. You're done. You better have that memorized before you walk in there. Well,
that's a level of competence that is not required and not even really necessary for 99.9% of occupations.
Totally right. It's a good point. But and that's the sort of stuff that happens behind the scenes that is a catalyst and is part of the genesis of these ideas and these companies that most people don't know.
But that's part of why they don't know is think about, do the ants wonder how we build skyscrapers? I'm not trying to belittle anybody or denigrate anybody, but if you've never been exposed to or never had to
don't need to
live in that experience or that world, then you're not going to really spend many cycles on it.
Agree. But I would always, whenever they would show some hesitancy, just about the industry overall, I'd say, if you think that we're done with human innovation, that humans just can't invent anymore, can't create anymore, you're right. You don't want to invest here. But if you think, as I do, that no, we're not. We will never be. That's the way God made us. So what happens is people innovate and they create tools, and somebody else comes along and says, wait, I could use those tools to create something else. And it just keeps snowballing. And I'm just using that as an example of how we got to where we can build these big 250,000 square foot buildings that aren't going to topple over in a hurricane. We could do it 20 years ago, you just couldn't afford it. Now we can do it in an affordable way because humans got their brain power together and said, yeah, I think if we did. But that's how everything is invented. This is a good thing. This is the manifestation of American capitalism and innovation. All the socialists want to do is just recut the pie, as I say all the time. They don't want to grow the pie. They just want to recut it. You give me some of yours. I don't want to wait and put my brains to taxation or my physical body to be used in creating something, in innovating something. So
they don't want to take the risk.
Yeah, there's a look, and everybody's wired different.
That's why they love daddy government, because they can't stand risk. They're risk averse. They can't do anything on their own. They got to have their hand held by daddy government for their rest of their adult lives. That's the mindset they have.
I know.
That's the mindset we're up against.
Yep.
A bunch of learned helplessness.
Yeah, I hear you. I get it. Let's see what we got on the C Spire text line. Mailman Clayton says, I would rather pay more for American beef. I'm not even sure. Is beef, is it labeled as to its origin? You can't tell, can you?
I think some brands are putting like 100% American beef with the flag on it, but I don't know that it's a industry standard or a regulation.
Yeah. Well, seafood, right? We did that, but I don't know that we have the same standard applied to beef.
Part of the problem is while Mailman Clayton may be willing to pay more for American beef, and you have people saying, well, I would pay more for American-made products, you're one person. You're one data point. And it seems like the majority of people won't.
Yeah.
It's just not in our DNA. It's not in our culture. It's not a part of our society for it to really be important to pay a premium for something made here. There are countries around the world where that's a big deal. You go to Germany, you go to Japan, you go to places like that where they will pay a premium just to know it's coming from their country. But that's a much bigger part of their culture. It's a much bigger part of their societal identity than it is here.
Yeah. Well,
and that's an uphill battle that American manufacturers and producers have to fight against. They have to find other ways to sell their value other than just being American-made, because that's not a big enough selling point for the majority.
That's also how you keep prices in check, because that opens up the world of competition. Carrie and McComb says, we shall see if the stores see the discount. I fear it will be swallowed by the middlemen. Well, that would also apply to the domestic beef producers, because they are the ones that buy the product at auctions, essentially. Coming right back with the final segment of Middays. Stay with us.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
It's finally Friday. I'm free again. I got my motor running for a wild weekend. It's finally Friday. I'm out of control. Forget the working blues and let the good times roll. I got a little sugar baby down the road. She's sitting on a radio and rocking on gold. We'll dance up a storm and later on tonight we'll be working on doing all the wrong things right.
Yeah, Kevin from Tupelo asked, will the beef be labeled up to 25% imported product? Yeah, I'm just not sure what to think about that. Dan in Hattiesburg wrote us earlier, said Paxton, that's Ken Paxton over in Texas. He's the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. He's a terrible candidate, too much baggage. I do think, Dan, he's a weak candidate as well, and that's one of the reasons that Democrat James Tallarico is faring pretty strongly against him in some polls. Yeah, and I'm concerned about that. Tim from Tupelo said young people weren't around in the 70s like I was when we had gas rationing, long gas lines. They would really be freaking out sitting in long gas lines, and all we had was a radio to listen to with, yeah, that's right, Tim, with limited stations, no cell phones. And that's back when I was talking about how just impatient society has become, and in particular, young people are impatient. And I think that's one of the reasons that they're frustrated with capitalism. Because in general, now it doesn't mean that you certainly couldn't hit some sort of sweet spot and streak where you got wealthy in a hurry. And that's actually happening more in capitalism. We talked about that on the show, that there was a report a couple of months ago indicating more millionaires were minted than ever last year in this country. Exceeded all the other countries in the world combined. And also increasing the number of billionaires. We're up to about 1,000 in the country. That's up from 700 3 or 4 years ago. More, and also we're seeing more achieve billionaire status under 30. You remember we shared that report. Forbes had a whole article about that. The folks that invented Cauchy are an example. Remember that, Rhino? The male and female that met, was it at Columbia or Penn or one of the Ivy League schools, MIT somewhere. She, I think, from somewhere in South America. He and
MIT.
MIT, yeah, okay. And they met, came up with this idea, and now they're billionaires. They're not even 30. So, again, what did they do? Leverage the tools somebody else created. And I mean, going back to basic networking that allowed us to build the internet so we're all connected around the world. It started back then, 40 years ago. Actually, you could go back to the 70s when TCP/IP was invented. And you used teletype machines to send messages over wires, and that evolved into modern networking that really became more mainstream. I mean, I was participating in that in my company, and that was back in the 80s. Just the ability to connect computers together in an office and share assets and resources. That's where the word or the term server came from. That'd be a central machine, and you put all your software and data on that, and everybody connected to it with their PCs, and you shared the power of that machine. And also didn't have to run around with sneaker net, as we used to call it, with diskettes. Here, have my file. Now, fast forward to today. Incredible. So, without that, there is no Cauchy. That's the point. And guess what? And innovators came up with a way to install fiber all over the place without being so concerned about spoiling it because you were bending it, crimping it, just stretching it, whatever, just handling it in general. I remember those days. You looked at it wrong. Oh, my gosh, you messed the fiber up. But that's all changed. You see it out on the roads. Construction guys, ramming that stuff into the ground. So guess who came up with all that? The glass manufacturers. It's Corning.
Yeah, now if they're running a long line of fiber, they'll pressurize the conduit and literally shoot it through with air pressure.
Incredible. Technology.
Comes shooting out the hole on the other end.
Man, I'm literally not kidding.
It could not be that rough with early fiber.
No. Heck no. I'm telling you, you looked at it wrong, and it wouldn't work.
Remember the decorative fiber optic lamps?
Yeah. Yeah. That's some 70s stuff there. So, pretty sure truckers traveling throughout states are still required to buy fuel in that state, says Ron from Pickwick. Interesting. Retailers using an app that tracks oil prices up to the minute suggest a price regardless of what they paid for what's in their tanks. Interesting. Again, driven by this digital world. Gerard, we consumers are calling BLS. Stop sending our fuels overseas. It's not really the way it works, Tim, and I'm sorry. We don't produce enough oil to meet our demand here, my friend. We never have. Total energy, yes. That's what doesn't get explained. Oil, you can go research all this and verify it. We generate about 13 million barrels a day. We consume 19 million. We don't produce enough. Never have. Could we? Yeah. But that would flood the market with more oil, drive the price down. Then the oil companies can't really make it. So the way to drive it down, quit using so much. Who's up for that? Nobody. We're out of here today. Back with you Monday. Stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.